I have become the noticer, and I can't help but notice a couple of things. For example, a couple of weeks ago, the White House announced that it may have plans to ban gas stoves. And all of a sudden, there's all these Twitter accounts that had almost no activity. And they are so vocal and parroting the White House about banning gas stoves, which seems to be something that's incredibly unpopular to the general population, and I'll even explain why that is. But it's so interesting. Like all of a sudden, all these accounts, they're talking about, oh, how concerned they are about gas stoves. Did you even hear this conversation 2 months ago? Maybe you've heard it if you're in Europe, but the only time it was mentioned is when people were laughing about it. And I'll explain why. If you live in a city, transitioning from a gas stove to an induction stove or an electric stove isn't that big of a problem. Sure, it's costly, it's a burden, it's annoying, but when your gas stove finally runs out and it gets damaged and you go purchasing something new, okay, you can buy an induction one. If you live in the middle of goddamn nowhere, there are people that still use propane tanks. There are people that still require to burn wood in order to heat their homes. Now, probably this isn't a widespread problem in the United States, although if you happen to live somewhere in the mountains, if you happen to live somewhere far away, that definitely is an issue. But if you live in Europe, especially Eastern Europe, there are entire villages that are not connected to gas. So when the European Union says something so ridiculous like they're going to ban gas stoves, it's highly unpopular here. Secondly, I transitioned to electric because I was thinking, this was before the pandemic, I was thinking, okay, so they're probably going to start taxing gas, we're probably going to see more green taxes coming up, so might as well go to electricity. Big mistake for several reasons. Number one, electricity prices have gone up. But the more important one, and many people probably don't even know this, if you have an electric stove, and let's say you have a big family dinner, and you have to cook on at least 3 spots on that stove. Maybe you have a chicken in the oven as well. So you're using all that stove. You might have the washing machine running. Maybe the television is on, right? Because you have guests. Maybe you have a kid that's playing at the computer. It short circuits your power outage. Like most houses aren't designed to have this level of electric consumption. So if you happen to be in an old building, if you happen to be in a place that isn't upgraded, or in some cases, you might even be in a place that has a up-to-date modern electrical grid. But the problem is, like, even then, like, an electric stove, especially if it's not the latest model, if it's not one that's designed in order to consume less, is going to be quite a significant power consumption. And if you couple it with a couple of other modern electronics, yeah, it can actually short circuit. But, they're not talking about it. So you have this Ronnie Jackson, Texas congressman, who says that he will never give up his gas stove. If the government wants to ban gas stoves, they will not come into your house and take it away. What they will do is that they will make it very difficult to purchase one. Right? So basically, when your gas stove actually breaks down, and eventually it will break down, then when you buy a new one, you'll only be limited to buying electric or induction. So this is what they're probably planning to do. I don't know if they're going to go through with it, because as I mentioned before, it's very unpopular. The backlash is from the left and the right. But let's see if they actually care about the people. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is parroting the same thing. It's, exposure from NO2 gas stoves is linked to reducing cognitive performance. Who fucking cares? Literally, who cares? I don't want to live my life in absolute safety. Like, this idea of public health has to be the most illiberal fascist shit that I have seen in my entire fucking life. I mean, what's next? Okay, so are we now going to ban alcohol because it's also linked with cognitive reduction in performance? Should we ban smoking? Should we ban, like, everything that's fucking fun? It's like utopia is one more regulation away. Are we allowed to even have fun in our lives? Should we ban cars? And I think, like, the scary thing is that the answer is yes to all. That's what really frightens me about this, is that, yeah, if they could, they would ban cars. They would ban alcohol. They would ban everything. Meanwhile, there's almost no conversation about the fatness epidemic, which, by the way, being fat was a risk factor in dying from COVID. Almost no discussion about that. Interesting, isn't it? What about corn syrup that Americans put in everything? Are you going to have a conversation about that if you're interested in public health? No, very selective when it comes to public health. Now, another interesting thing that I see people raised up is the fact that the government can arbitrarily cut off your access to electrical power much easier than they can cut access to your gas. Now, of course, this is a conspiracy theory, right? But if you guys remember during the lockdowns, I think it was in California, yeah? There was the governor suggesting that if you have a party or if you have like more than a number of people in your residence, they could cut off access to your electricity. I don't know if they actually did it, but I remember seeing it on the news. They were at least talking about doing it, right? So theoretically, yes, the government can easily cut access to your electricity. A lot more difficult to cut access to gas. So that is just one point. I don't think like the people who are planning this have this in mind, but it does seem to lead into the area of more control. Another issue, what happens if you live in a place where you have constant power outages? Especially as more people transition to electricity, right? Like you want electric cars, you want everyone to have electric gas stoves, you want all of this. Okay, so more people are moving towards electricity. You haven't upgraded the power grid everywhere, so in some places there might be power outages. Do you know how annoying it is when you can't fucking cook? Not to mention, like, if it's during the middle of the winter and you have a power outage and you're freezing in your home, if you have gas, you can at least warm one room. I mean, well, I don't know how many people lived in Eastern Europe, but this was quite common here. Like, you would be in the middle of the winter, the communist era, right? The golden age of Romania. Sometimes the heating would go off. So what people did is, like, yeah, they would light up the gas in the kitchen and they would stay in the kitchen in order to warm themselves up. Not the most ideal solution, but it was a solution nonetheless, so you don't freeze your ass off. You're not going to be able to do that. And of course, you know, some people are complaining about the cooking quality. They are saying that it's a lot more difficult to cook a steak when you have an electric stove. Now, I don't know about that, but I assume that the gentlemen at the World Economic Forum that we all voted for probably don't want you to eat the steak anyway. I mean, probably the crickets are a lot easier to warm up on electric and gas. Who knows? But yeah, so my main point of concern regarding all of this is the interesting fact that I see this astroturfing going on. Almost everyone now is spreading the talking points. They're very concerned about my cognitive performance. They weren't concerned about my cognitive performance last year, but all of a sudden they seem to care a lot. They care about my cognitive performance a lot more than they care about theirs. And I find this to be very interesting. Let me know what you guys think though, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.